Assalamu alaikum and welcome back, dear friends of sport, for another fascinating session. My name is Ali Tsemani. I'm 15 years old and my home is here in the beautiful kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
I just joined the session on the Tokyo Champions. All four athletes were amazing. They encouraged me to keep active and do sport. Hi to everyone joining us for the UTS World Virtual Youth Festival 2021. My name is Yazid Khaled and I'm 13 years old, also from the kingdom. Today, we are still facing the COVID-19 pandemic. Sports internationally has been affected and so has mental health.
The numbers of people around the world suffering with anxiety, depression, isolation, economic and health challenges, higher rates of substance and domestic abuse, and sadly suicide ideation have all risen. Over 332 million youth have had to endure staying at home, putting mental health at risk and well-being. Did you know that the impact of mental health issues can be more dangerous in this age group than in any other, as suicide is found to be the second leading cause of death among those aged 10 to 34?
The numbers are not going down, and they will not go down unless everyone works together to do more. We must do more. Because if global health continues to decline, many lives could be lost. Today, we'll hear from experts and those who face challenges to their mental health through sports. The Tokyo 2020 Games were an incredible opportunity to start to have important conversations about mental health, but it should not stop there.
We all need positive action. The Games were a breakthrough on the topic of mental health. Competing in sports at an elite level must be so tough. I guess that is part of what makes these athletes exceptional. Today, we are joined by representatives from the international Olympic community, UNESCO, the field of sports psychology, past and present international athletes, and experts who have lived through decades of sport challenges.
Before we discuss and share with you, we are honored to introduce our special guest who works daily to ensure the health of the world. They will use their expertise to share the realities of the world's mental health and how the pandemic has affected our well-being. It is important to keep informed, share what we know, and support those who we feel are suffering. From mental health issues, well-being, we have huge amounts of respect for what you do.
When we think of elite sport and athlete health, we commonly focus on the importance of physical health and fitness, recognizing the subsequent benefits to athlete well-being and athletic performance. Mental health and well-being, though of crucial importance, are often overlooked. Whilst evidence consistently demonstrates that regular physical activity is associated with improvements in physical and mental wellness, studies nonetheless show that 1 in 3 athletes experience mental health symptoms and disorders at some point in their career. Despite their unique sporting talents, athletes are not immune to mental health challenges such as burnout, distress, anxiety, depression, unhealthy eating habits, insomnia, and alcohol misuse. There are many factors which can impact athletes' mental wellness, such as injury, performance pressures, dealing with failure and or success, and career transition. This is in addition to life challenges experienced outside of sport. The COVID-19 pandemic has further been shown to have negatively impacted mental health and well-being, not just in sport, but across society. An Athlete 365 survey of 3,289 athletes from 135 countries in 2020 found that 50% of the athlete respondents were struggling to keep motivated, and 32% were finding it difficult to manage their mental health. The well-being of athletes has always been and will always be a top priority for the International Olympic Committee. Recommendation 5 of Olympic Agenda 2020 plus 5 raises awareness on the importance of protecting the physical and mental well-being of athletes and pledges to continue to increase mental health support programs for elite athletes and their entourage. The IOC initiatives related to the protection and promotion of elite athlete mental health have been developed by the IOC Medical and Scientific, Athletes Entourage, and IOC athletes commissions under the expert guidance of the IOC Mental Health Working Group. They include the IOC Mental Health in Elite Athletes Toolkit, launched in May 2021, the hashtag Mentally Fit Helpline, a free, independent, 24-hour-a-day support line available to Olympic and Paralympic athletes during and for 3 months after the Tokyo and Beijing Games, staffed by expert counselors, providing athletes with guidance and advice in over 70 languages, sport-specific mental health assessment and recognition tools, the Athlete 365 Mentally Fit Awareness Raising and Educational Campaigns, and the IOC Mental Health in Elite Athletes Diploma and Certificate courses. These tools and initiatives seek to raise the awareness of the importance of protecting and promoting elite athlete mental health, recognizing that human well-being must be at the heart of athletic performance. As noted by Abhinav Bindra, IOC Athletes Commission member and a member of the IOC Mental Health Working Group, mental health and physical health are two halves of a whole, and care for both must be seen as a priority. Therefore, on behalf of the IOC, I would like to thank UTS for this very important initiative.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Honestly, from what we heard, we should be worried. But we should also understand there is a lot we can do together. The change starts with everyone, and there is no better time than the present to make a change. Support your loved ones and neighbors.
Joining us today, we welcome Lord Sebastian Coe, President of the World Athletics Federation and a former Olympic champion who is known around the world for outstanding achievements and 4 times gold medalist. We are also joined by Dr. Mohammed Faqihi, Professor of Sports Psychology at King Saud University, who has extensive knowledge and understanding the mind of athletes. The fantastic Mr. Philip Muller-Ruth, who is the Chief of Sport for UNESCO and is dedicated to ensuring safety and well-being through sports. And we also have a member of the IOC refugee team. We are so excited to have join us to share their experiences from being involved in the Tokyo 2020 Games after the long postponement.
Lord Coe, you have had an epic career as an Olympic champion, winning Olympic gold medals and have set numerous world records in middle distance running. You, sir, are a true inspiration to us all. With your vast experience, what techniques, strategies, tools, or support do you feel can help to manage the mental pressures faced by elite athletes?
Look, I think there are plenty of mechanisms, plenty of supports. You might look to the support provided by an international federation or a member federation, or if you're in a grassroots community, then the types of support systems that are provided by your coaches and maybe your sports club. But I tend to think that structures are one thing, but it's about people. And in my competitive career, and I speak only from my own experience, it's probably different for others, that I felt comforted that I had family, friends, a social circle of people, not a wide social circle, but a social circle of people that I could trust to maybe discuss some of the challenges, some of the pressures, some of the fears, some of the anxieties, to do it in a way that you don't feel that you are in a way sort of taking up their time. You have to really respect the openness and the candor that sometimes you will get back in return, and treat it as sometimes as critical analysis. But it is about people, and it is about trusting and confiding and not being afraid to show vulnerability. Actually, vulnerability can be emotionally connecting. I know when I've sat chatting to athletes, and I do that a lot, when they talk to me about their own vulnerabilities, their own anxieties, I'm probably individually much more moved to try and do something and to try and help them than dealing with people that are just saying, oh, it's fine, I can master this on my own. Actually, reaching out and asking for help is often the first stepping stone to a pattern or a road to recovery.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience, having been in sport for many years and seen the evolution as well as the challenges.
Dr. Muhammad, we are delighted to welcome you today as co-professor at sports psychology at King Stewart University. Can you share with us, from your experience and knowledge, what you have found to be the most common symptoms of mental health disorder in athletes?
The most common symptoms of mental health disorders in athletes are anxiety, stress, lacking of motivation, depression, and burnout.
Doctor, we certainly understand that there are many factors involved in decreased mental health for athletes, and knowing where to go for support and having tools to serve as protective factors definitely help.
Over the last year, we have seen significantly more professional athletes speak up and share their mental health challenges with the world. Many do so in the hopes of encouraging others facing similar challenges to seek help and know that they are not alone. You could say we are seeing a destigmatization in sport, which is quite profound. Mr. Mullerworth, what do you feel sport organizations should focus on immediately to address and prevent exacerbating mental health issues?
Mental health starts to be an important issue not only in our societies, but also in sports organizations. However, it is still very much in a taboo zone or in a stigma. And the first thing sport organizations should be doing is recognize the issue and allow athletes to speak out who are concerned. Top athletes are very often subject to pressure of all sorts from media, from sponsors, from their families. And the sports organizations should be aware of these pressures and allow these athletes to speak out and identify themselves, persons within the sport organizations to whom they can open up. Athletes can be also provided with self-care tools from sports organizations, and in the longer term, sports organizations need to provide specialized personnel to assist people who face mental health issues.
This is really interesting to hear your views, even as a non-athlete myself. Mental health should be a priority to everybody, everywhere. Thank you for guiding us all and reminding us of what is truly important when addressing our mental well-being.
Ibrahim, you are the chair of the Athletes Commission and a member of the executive board of the Saudi Arabia Olympic Committee. You are aware of the struggles that athletes face, especially during the pandemic. What do you think was the biggest challenge faced during the COVID-19 pandemic for yourself?
The COVID-19 pandemic was a disruption that put athletes to the test, both mentally and physically. Suddenly, access to facilities, equipment, and coaching became out of reach. So many athletes were forced to find creative ways to continue their training from home, with conditions that aren't very ideal. Now, despite that being hard, I think the biggest challenge for athletes was the lack of certainty. It all happened so fast, and no one knew how long it would last. And with restrictions on travel, mass gatherings, and physical activity, sports competitions had constant cancellations and postponements. So oftentimes that meant that athletes were training while not knowing exactly what they're training for.
Lord Co, you are known for having set 3 world records in the space of 41 days. You have continued your career post-retirement, and since 2015, you have held the position of president at one of the largest sports federations in the world, the International Associations of Athletics Federations. So, you are still very much involved in sport. What aspects or mechanisms in sport do you think contribute towards mental health deterioration?
You can look at those elements that are induced through competition, the stresses and strains, sometimes individual sports, they're lonely, there's a loneliness involved in individual sports. It's not like a team sport where you travel with your team all the time. It may be that you spend inevitably a long periods of time, maybe only with your coach, maybe actually having to cover the types of things you need to do in training, and it's not always possible to do that with other people. So there's an element of that. I also think that we need to, as I said, we need to understand a great deal more about the landscape, some of the social challenges, some of the cultural challenges that our competitors have in order to be able to compete in international competition. And I think having systems and structures that anticipate some of those challenges, look and maybe dissect what those challenges are so that they can be absorbed more into the training programs. And look, good coaches are good psychologists, but I think that there's certainly a mental side to our sport, which for some, working with sports psychologists, working with people that can help them, but it's not always just about sports psychology. It's actually being able to confide and trust in your friendship circle, to maybe confide and trust in your training group, to your coaches, to your parents. So I think everybody has a role to play here in providing a support network for competitors.
For all the sport federations and organizations, this information and knowledge is just so important. We thank you, Lord Coe, for sharing it with us.
There's an important relationship between an athlete and their coach, but what is also important is to understand that this role goes far beyond sport performance and towards general well-being. There are many developmental stages throughout the career of an athlete, and the coach needs to support all the stages, such as an emotional situation, for example, experiencing a loss. Many organizations and government coaching courses offer a deeper understanding of mental health in sport through education. How, in your opinion, could sport coaches help athletes' mental health?
Coaches must have the knowledge of how they can start supporting their athletes' mental health by encouraging athletes to talk about their mental health, monitor athletes' mental health, include mental health into everyday coaching. Finally, coaches can promote coping skills.
Dr. Muhammad, you made some really critical points that we hope every coach or sport official watching will think about and implement. Thank you again.
Do you think, Mr. Mullerworth, that the world of sport and the entourage, including coaches, know enough about the symptoms and signs of mental health challenges? If you look at the sport pyramid from the international federation to national federations, from the clubs and gyms, what fundamental facts does the sport world need to know about mental health? How can the sport world help prevent mental health issues?
Sports organizations should be aware that mental health issues are amongst the most serious threats to the well-being of young people around the world. We know that sport is also a solution to overcome mental health issues if a sport is practiced with leisure, joy, and without pressure. However, when it comes to elite sport, pressure is a huge factor for elite athletes to face mental health issues. And we know that one of the core problems is that elite athletes facing mental health issues, and we estimate this about 1/3 of the athletes at least, are not speaking out. So an environment of transparency that allows athletes to speak out about their mental health issues is absolutely critical.
You certainly are a true expert, Mr. Mullerworth, and we are also learning from this important, in fact critical, session. A huge thank you once again for your fountain of knowledge.
If the choice to not compete was made due to a physical injury instead of a mental health issue, do you think people would be more understanding?
Today, yes, I do think that if an athlete chose not to compete due to a physical injury, people, especially non-athletes, would understand a bit more than if they chose to back out for a mental health issue. But that's driven by the lack of awareness, which fortunately is getting much better here in Saudi Arabia and internationally. But we do need to do a lot more. Athletes live a very stressful life, and they're tested to the limit constantly, both physically and mentally. Not to mention what they may be going through behind the scenes and in their personal lives. And that can become extremely exhausting psychologically. But not everyone sees that. So there becomes a stigma around mental health issues with athletes, which causes many athletes to have this pressure to maintain a mental toughness. But then this just adds more pressure and forces athletes to bottle up their problem, which can sometimes lead to mental and physical circumstances and injuries. So we need to do more to make athletes know that it's okay to ask for help and that there's nothing wrong with that. And we need to do more to prioritize providing mental and psychological coaching to athletes as part of their training programs.
All respect to you for all you have been through, all the steps and sacrifices you have taken to be where you are today. Thank you for being with us today too.
Many athletes battle with mental health issues, and all too often in silence. The benefits of sport and the capacity to change lives are clear. But sport can also expose and create psychological challenges for athletes. Many might ask what these health disorders might be, from eating disorders, depression, overtraining, pressure to succeed, sleep disorders, and the list goes on. Lord Sebastian Coe, in your opinion, what do you feel the sport world is missing when it comes to maintaining mental health?
Look, I think we're in a much better landscape than we were even 5 years ago. The recurring theme around the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games was one of mental health, mental well-being. I think we've rather focused a lot of attention, quite understandably, because sport is in large part physical, but we have focused a great deal of our time and attention in federations and sporting organizations about the right diagnostics to get athletes back into competition and into team sports as quickly as you can after injury. Maybe we should have spent a little bit more time understanding the mental pressures, the challenges to mental health. And they can come in any number of ways, because it's not just about the competition. Competition produces its own stresses and strains, both mental and physical, but we've also got to understand the landscape that competitors are also dealing with. Sometimes they're going to be the product of relationship breakdown. They may be the product of painful divorces. They may have bereavement, a parent in the background. So good coaches have always understood that they need to understand and be across the technical element of their coaching, of course, but they also need to know as much as they possibly can about the landscape that the athletes, the competitors that they're working with are also operating in, understand their hinterland, understand some of the challenges away from the field of play and the training venues that the athletes are under. And then I think you get a better balance. I've always sensed as well that our member federations could do, all of us in sport could do a little bit more to help that transitional period where athletes have the whole day planned around training, and suddenly when their careers are over, there's quite a gap, there's quite a chasm that needs filling, and sometimes that in itself is enough to trigger some mental challenges. So I think there are lots of things that we're doing a lot better than we were, but I do think that we've some way to go.
On the positive, you have revealed that there is room for much improvement, and that is a good sign. May you continue to inspire, educate, and empower future generations to keep actively problem solving and working together for a better and healthier world.
A survey conducted by the IOC in June 2020 revealed that managing mental health was one of the biggest challenges faced by athletes during the pandemic. Over 4,000 athletes from 135 countries took part in the survey, and the results highlighted 50% had issues with training, and 32% stated that managing mental health was their second biggest challenge. How, in your opinion, has COVID-19 affected the mental health of athletes?
Recently, results of several research have confirmed that some athletes competing in individual sports experience elevated levels of psychological distress during the coronavirus pandemic. Therefore, they need the support of a sport psychologist during such period to help in maintaining their psychological well-being.
Yet again, you raise some important factors. The sport world needs to prioritize mental health as much, if not more, than they do with physical health. Just because you can't necessarily see the injuries mental health causes, it doesn't mean that they aren't there. Education is key.
We all recognize the power of sport to advance society. The United Nations have called upon countries to include sport and physical activities in their recovery plans. Now more than ever, the world of sport for all abilities must stand together and actively support each other post-pandemic. To ensure support for all as a basic human right, we shouldn't forget marginalized groups and people, as they will continue to suffer without support. We have witnessed a decline by 41% in physical activity since the start of the pandemic. In order to support COVID-19 recovery, how can society enhance the well-being of youth around the world?
The drastic decline of physical activity amongst young people due to the COVID-19 pandemic has had horrible consequences on their physical and mental health. To turn this evolution back and to use COVID as an opportunity We must place young people not only as beneficiaries of sport programs, but as the drivers and designers of these programs themselves. Sport is now an opportunity for young people to reconnect with societies after a lockdown situation and to shape the environment in which they practice physical activity and sport themselves.
With this festival held on the United Nations World Children's Day, it is really great to see our needs being discussed through this festival, and we hope that the action won't stop here but continue. Thank you for giving us inspiration for the future.
Athletes are more than ever prioritizing their mental health. Simone Biles stepped back from events at the Tokyo Olympics, stating it's okay not to be okay. In terms of raising awareness to prioritizing mental health, in your opinion, how significant were the decisions made by Simone to raise awareness?
Simone Biles and other elite athletes from all around the world being vocal about the topic of mental health is extremely significant. It created a wave of awareness that was needed in the sports movement. And not only amongst athletes to know that they're not alone and it's okay not to be okay, but also for the entire entourage around athletes, from coaches, managers, fans, or even sports organizations, to be conscious of the weight that is on the shoulders of athletes. And I truly hope that movements like this have a lasting impact to help athletes prioritize their mental health, but also for sporting organizations to be conscious of what athletes do go through day in and day out, and to step in and provide the right support when it's needed.
Doctor, we heard from Lord Coe and Mr. Mullerworth, so we ask you also, what are your thoughts about what you feel the sports world needs to know about mental health?
Has shown that the benefits of exercise can boost moods and improve overall mental health. By moving our bodies, we can increase our endorphin, which is naturally producing hormones that make us better or feel better. It also allows us time to concentrate on ourselves instead of our busy lives. A much needed break, many of us.
Really interesting to hear your perspective, and thank you for sharing it with us. It is always good to hear different opinions and broaden our perspective on such global topics and challenges. Thank you for your expertise and your contribution to share with the world.
It is my greatest pleasure to thank you, all of our wonderful guests, those who truly are making a difference, and a special thank you to the World Health Organization. This is a moment I treasure, to be a part of this event with leaders of change. Today, this session touched on mental health, and quite honestly, the time is now to do more. I ask you, adults and leaders of the world, please do all that you can to support us and give us chances to be supported when we suffer. Provide a safe place to turn when we are in need. Many children suffer in silence too.
I hereby close this session with a final thought. If we could improve and reduce the rate of mental health issues, how would the world look? See you soon for the next session of the UTS World Virtual Youth Festival 2021, right here from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the world.